Hi, Stephen. How you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. It's a little foggy today, but it's the Bay Area, so it's always foggy.
It's not foggy here.
Hmm.
300 days of sunshine. It's Colorado.
Wow. Well, let's jump right into it. You and I have known each other for a long time, so let's jump into a little bit of your background. You're, I would say, one of the busiest people in the craft spirits industry.
Well, thank you for that. I do a lot of government affairs and legislative work, both here in Colorado and at the national level. I've been known to help out other state guilds with their legislative and government affairs issues as well. Um, I'm still doing a lot of consulting. I only have one client right now, but I'm consulting master distiller for a large Irish operation. I think I've mentioned that to you before. That's changing a little bit right now because of the COVID crisis. So I'm less involved because I can't fly back and forth to Ireland. And we'll see where that goes. I mean, their budget's been hit as well, as have a lot of people in the food and beverage industry, not just the spirits industry. Um, I do a fair amount of teaching. We're actually getting ready here at Golden Moon to uh, launch some virtual distilling classes that'll come out later this year. We've still got the Distiller's Basement, Distiller apostrophe S Basement web series on YouTube. And we've been posting a bunch of cocktails and other fun stuff on that, so people should check that out. And then last but certainly not least, I still run Golden Moon Distillery here in Golden, where we're making 20 different products, a family of grain to glass single malts, a family of fruit to glass brandies and grappas, a bunch of gins, liqueurs, absinthe, and then an independently bottled line of whiskeys called Gunfighter that we finish in various casks here at the distillery. And last but not least with that, we're making a fair amount of hand sanitizer right now, most of which is going to first responders, hospitals, assisted living facilities, and various Colorado state government agencies. Colorado State Patrol, Department of Revenue, a few others.
Well, let's jump right into that then. Are
Okay.
craft distillers getting taxed on this hand sanitizer as if it were vodka or whiskey?
If it's not, if it is denatured alcohol, no, they're not.
Okay.
And that was part of the CARE Act. But it's kind of a moving target with regulations across the board. TTB and FDA still aren't synced up. The CARE Act, I believe, in fact, I know, allows for non-taxation on potable alcohol that's been converted to hand sanitizer, but FDA does not recognize that. FDA has dug its heels in the ground and said it has to be denatured, which is actually impeding most distilleries' ability to effectively make hand sanitizer to help their communities. It's not that we're not, but it's much harder to get the chemicals and put the processes together because the FDA has dug their heels into the ground, which is sad because it's actually literally potentially costing lives.
Sure. Why is it falling to a one industry who's already overtaxed and underappreciated? Why is it falling to that industry, to the craft spirits industry, to produce so much of what some might consider a necessity? Where are the big companies in this?
The big companies are all ramping up. There's a lot of craft distilleries that shifted 100% production to hand sanitizer and are actually making some money at it, and it's keeping them alive, which is great. But 6 to 8 months from, or 6 to 8 weeks from now or sooner, the big guys who have huge production capacity will swing in and flood the market. Anheuser-Busch, Pernod Ricard, Bacardi, just to mention a few, have all started making massive quantities of hand sanitizer. And so as a result, it's going to be plentiful again, and there's still going to be a need for it in the next, certainly within the next couple of months. My distillery, we shifted production for about 3 weeks exclusively to hand sanitizer, and then have slowly started switching back for a couple of reasons, not the least of which is, we're a whiskey shop. So my stills can distill to about 85% alcohol by volume. The FDA requires hand sanitizer alcohol to have been distilled above, I believe it's 94.1, if I remember correctly. I don't have the regs in front of me. And then deproof to 80%. So while the CDC and everybody else says 60% or above is effective, so I could be converting, say, malted barley into a viable hand sanitizer because of the FDA regs. I can't. And I don't understand their logic behind that. TTB is working well with the industry, but so for both the lack of raw materials, as in I need to buy neutral spirit from somebody else to convert to hand sanitizer, and because of the FDA regs, my production capability, my legal production capability is probably the best way to say it, is limited. The other piece of that, though, is I don't necessarily want to be in the hand sanitizer business long term, and most of my peers feel the same way. We're doing this to help our communities. As I said, there are some that are making a lot of money doing this, but most of us are doing this to help our communities. Most of us are not set up to efficiently make it, so at best we're breaking even, if not losing money. I'm actually probably losing money on it. I mean, it's cash flow, but every bottle that goes out the door costs me something. But when I see, we're in the city of Golden, when I see the Golden Fire Department and the Golden Police Department, coming in saying we can't find it anywhere, you know what? I can get it to them. And those are the people that protect my family, my friends, my neighbors. When the Colorado Patrol walks in here and says we're having trouble finding it, those are the people that are keeping our roads safe. When Denver Fire Department walks in here, and I haven't, by the way, I have not officially provided anything to Denver Fire, just truth in advertising, but a number of the firefighters themselves that I know have come in here seeking hand sanitizer because they can't get enough at the fire department. So we're doing things like that. Even, for example, all the testing tents that Kaiser Permanente has set up here in Denver initially were outfitted with hand sanitizer from my distillery. Guess what? I didn't make money on those sales, but it was the right thing to do for my community in the short term. And in the long term, when the big guys swing in with large volume, I'm not going to need to do this anymore, and I can go back to making whiskey full-time, whiskey and gin and et cetera full-time, which is what I do for a living and how we make our money.
Okay, so hand sanitizer aside, let's talk a little bit about some of the antiquated regulations that seem to be, if not disappearing, seem to be being disproven during this time.
So
cocktails to go, for instance.
there's a variety of regulations that are antiquated. Let me just talk first about excise taxes, and then we'll switch into some of the other ones. The excise tax regime that the U.S. has really dates all the way back to Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. And both of them believed that beer, wine, and cider were good and healthy for you, and that what they referred to as ardent spirits, so distilled beverages, were bad for you. So throughout America's history, we've had a unlevel playing field that that distillers have had to face based on the perception that distilled spirits are bad. And that affects most distilleries at both the state and the national level. Modern science has proven that alcohol is alcohol is alcohol, and the equivalent amount of alcohol in a beer or a glass of wine is just as harmful to a human being as is the same amount of alcohol in a shot or in a cocktail. Everything in moderation. Everybody should be drinking responsibly, in small quantities. Various medical studies have shown that alcohol is actually beneficial in small quantities. There's a lot of debate on that, but you can Google New England Journal of Medicine and come up with half a dozen articles that actually state that. They're scientific, peer-reviewed journal articles. So, we've always believed that beer, wine, cider, and distilled spirits should be taxed on parity and should face the same type of regulations on parity. That sort of has happened on a temporary basis at the national level with federal excise tax, something that is is contributing to craft distillers actually surviving this crisis, because we're not paying the huge amount of excise tax we had to pay just a year and a half, 2 years ago. We're hoping that the federal government will make that permanent. But even look, here in Colorado is a great example. The alcohol excise taxes collected in the state is well over 60% from distilled spirits, but by volume of alcohol, we only make up like 21% of total alcohol sales. So there's a disparity there. Some states are a lot worse. I mean, we have it relatively light here in Colorado, where we pay a little over 60 cents a beverage liter. The people in California are paying something like $9 a proof gallon, which is, it's frightening. It's very expensive. And that number, I don't have those numbers in front of me. I know it's a lot. I think it's $9, but I'm not sure. So excise taxes are very antiquated. Literally, the excise tax regime at the federal level is structured virtually identically prior to the temporary federal excise tax reduction holiday we've had under the Craft Beverage Modernization Act. The way that Alexander Hamilton wrote it during the Jefferson administration, which led to America's first Civil War, which was the Whiskey Rebellion, which is why it was very quickly repealed and then not put back into place until the Civil War, in order to generate much needed revenue for the Union Army. So these are old legal structures that predate modern times and modern science, and probably are no longer appropriate for the modern world. But because of the fiscal costs, because the government is used to getting a lot of tax revenue at both the state and federal levels from us distillers, they're not going to change it, or there's resistance to change it because what it'll cost the state and federal treasuries. So that's the first antiquated law, and I'm glad you let me talk about that. At the national level, we're lobbying very hard to have the Craft Beverage Modernization Act made permanent. Right now, it's been extended for a year. So it's crucial to us and our industry's survival, especially in the light of COVID-19, that happens. Because if it doesn't, and we have to go back to paying essentially 400% more than we're paying today, a lot of distilleries just won't survive. I mean, a lot of distillers aren't going to survive this anyway, but the number will be far greater if at the end of the year, the Craft Beverage Modernization Act is not approved. So that's the first antiquated law that's floating out there that is a threat to our industry. The other ones that probably need to be discussed are direct-to-consumer shipping. Wine has had this for years. There are a few states that have allowed it to happen because of the crisis, and there are a few other states that have had it in law either prior to the crisis or were in the process of passing laws, such as Kentucky, as the crisis began. And the small and medium-sized distilleries in the states with direct consumer shipping are faring a lot better than those of us in states where it's not allowed, because it's an avenue to reach consumers. It's an avenue that wine has enjoyed for years. And in fact, most wineries are very quietly celebrating the fact that they're shipping huge quantities of wine direct to consumers because people are staying at home, and it's the easiest way for them to get a good bottle of wine. The distillers in certain states that are doing this now, some of them are very, very happy, while the rest of us are starving. The rest of us, are in jeopardy because of lack of cash flow, because of loss of revenue, loss of access to consumers, of going out of business. There's the recent ACSA report, industry survey. 2/3 of craft distillers in the United States believe they will not survive the next few months. 2/3. That's a frightening number. And those are all good people that are, whose livelihoods are in jeopardy, and who could lose their essentially their savings because of lack of access to consumers to sell the products they're making. So that's the second law. Now, wine's had this ability for years. The wholesalers and the off-premise retailers are pushing back against distilleries being able to do it, saying that they believe it'll harm their businesses, and saying that they believe that it could lead to counterfeiting and it could lead to underage or intoxicated people receiving alcohol. Now, that hasn't happened in the states that are allowing it. None of these problems have happened. And in the states that are allowing it, the retailers are doing well, all things considered. The wholesalers are doing well. This isn't hurting them, but it is allowing the small and medium-sized alcohol producers to reach consumers that in this crisis they otherwise would not be able to reach. So hopefully every state will do this at some point. Hopefully it'll be made permanent on a national level, and we will enjoy the same type of benefits that the wine industry has enjoyed for years. I mean, that's the other thing. Again, we're talking parity between wine, beer, cider, and spirits. Wine has this incredible advantage of being able to do this, and we don't. And small wineries are prospering while small distilleries are bleeding because of it.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we need to take a deeper look at on a national scale. I mean, states, Kentucky being able to ship is something that I know for instance, the KDA has been wanting for a long time.
Well, so it's passed now in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania's had it since they passed their craft distilling law, and the Pennsylvania distillers are weathering the storm better than most. Oregon just passed an emergency law, I believe, last Friday. California is allowing it. Notice how I said that. And one of the other concerns that people have, so the governor here in Colorado and liquor enforcement didn't want this because they were worried about third-party providers such as Uber and Grubhub, et cetera, using underage drivers or drivers just handing it off like they would a pizza to potentially an underage or intoxicated consumer. What we're advocating for in every state, and the craft industry is banded together, is to use the same shippers that the wine folks are already using, which have track and trace capability, which can ensure delivery of alcohol to the designated purchaser and can confirm their age. So if wine can do it again, why can't we? All the concerns that people are throwing up to justify these outdated laws have been disproven, in this case, by the wine industry.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there it is.
Let's talk the future. I know you said the ACSA reports look fairly bleak. 2/3 of the craft distillers might not make it over the past few months.
And that was an industry survey. So, you know, the world has changed. The world is not what the world was 90 days ago. Many of the craft producers in this country, their business models are tasting room centric. And 90 days ago, that was a very viable business model. For that matter, several states around the country even have special licenses, Colorado being one of them, where the license is what's called a distiller's pub or distillery restaurant, etc., where just like an on-premise, they're essentially an on-premise centric venue that's not really designed to sell a whole lot of spirits off-premise. Here in Colorado, in fact, they're restricted in how much they can distribute. And it's a silly number. It's like 300 cases. It's tiny. So, the world has changed for all these distilleries. In truth in advertising, we're bigger and have wider distribution than most distilleries in Colorado. But 60% of our revenue still comes from our tasting room. And that revenue right now is gone. So, it's a scary time. We're going to have to reinvent ourselves. Our fellow small and medium-sized producers are going to have to an extent, reinvent ourselves. Things like direct ship are going to be a crucial part of that. Things like being able to sell cocktails to go, which many states are now allowing on a temporary basis, some allow on a permanent basis, are going to be a huge part of that. The business models have to change, and the laws have to change with it.
Speaking of business models, I do want to talk a little bit about the direct-to-shipping business model. It seems to me, and I've had this discussion with other distillers, that tasting room sales and distribution through the three-tier system and designing a direct-to-consumer business model at the same time, those are very divergent business models. How can you reconcile those, and how can you do them both successfully?
Well, I'm going to push back on their divergent. They're just facets of the same thing. You know, we're going to push the bulk of our product through the three-tier system with our wholesaler partners, and they've got the reach, they've got the footprint that we as a smaller, medium-sized producer doesn't have. At the same time, though, especially when you can't walk into a liquor store, you have to walk up and think about what you want to order. Because we're a smaller brand that doesn't have the profile, these other types of consumer channels, revenue channels, are still going to be hugely important. So a tasting room is a venue where you can sell bottles and maybe cocktails depending on which state you're in. A direct-to-consumer shipment is really a tasting room sale, except we're putting it in a box, we're putting a label on it, and we're sending it out. You know, people can visit our tasting room virtually online, see our catalog. It's rung up in the tasting room, and then we put when we're able to do this, and in other states where they are able to do this, they put it in a box. They hand it to a licensed, approved courier service that has track and trace capability, and it is delivered to that consumer that is sheltering at home, weathering this pandemic. And that consumer can now enjoy a good cocktail or a glass of good whiskey, just like they could a glass of wine. So I don't really view these as different business models. I view these as different, emphasizing different consumer channels and opening up new consumer channels, and none of them are mutually exclusive. You know, I firmly believe that we as one of the a larger of the small distilleries in this state could not survive without our wholesale and retail partners. Though that will always be how most consumers get our products. But the additional channels that allow us to social media and segment market and fulfill a need for people that don't want to leave their house. And this will be true after this crisis is over as well. I mean, look at Amazon. More and more stuff is being ordered online and delivered. There's no reason why it shouldn't be allowed for us as well. And oh, by the way, it's allowed in Europe, and there aren't any problems.
To that point, there's a lot of things that are allowed in Europe where there's no problems.
Okay.
Well, so we've talked about quite a few things. The future, I think, for some, it looks a little bleak, but I think we will weather this. What are you guys doing to kind of in Colorado and personally to kind of get you through the hump?
Well, so in Colorado, we've been working hand in hand with the Colorado Liquor Enforcement Division and Governor Polis. We've gotten delivery, but it has to be by a distillery employee. We have cocktails to go, things that are helping, but they're not enough. The entire alcohol beverage industry, not just spirits, has asked the governor for various temporary tax holidays and licensure renewals and licensure fee holidays. We don't know if we're going to get those or not. Those are some of the things that the feds have actually put in place already. So we're not asking for, and oh, by the way, that other states have done, and that other industries have already gotten. So we're not asking for anything that is unique to us. We're pushing very hard, as I said before, for direct ship. But then we're all looking at what happens next. And that means how do we safely reopen our tasting rooms when our occupancies are probably going to be cut in half, the way we're allowed to interact with our customers and with our materials, such as making cocktails, may have to change or will have to change. We're looking at other unique ways to try and drive revenue that we might not have thought were important previously. You know, I'm doing some renovation and upgrades on both the tasting room here in our distillery and at our secondary tasting room, Golden Moon Speakeasy, where we're going to be putting in um, uh, sort of a to-go bottle and packaged cocktail station, so that people don't have to walk all the way into the speakeasy in order to get products to go. We're going to be putting plexiglass movable shields up so that if people want to be segregated, they can. And we're going to be doing a much higher level of cleaning. As I said, my wife is a physician, and we're really looking at the same type of cleaning that you would do in a surgical center between patients, between tables, in order to make sure that our customers are safe and comfortable in this new world in which we live. There's a few other things we're doing as well, but you know, those are things that we feel we have to do for the time being. If and when we reopen here in a few weeks at the Speakeasy, you know, all staff will be gloved. All staff will be wearing masks behind the bar. There'll be a plexiglass shield between the well and the consumer. Instead of having 17 bar stools, we're probably going to have more like 8 on the long bar. The side, you know, the side, we have sort of a drink rail that has 7 bar stools. Those are going away, and if someone wants to stand at the drink rail, they're going to have to be 6 feet from somebody else. You know, we're probably going to lose half our tables, so we can spread people out. It's what we're going to have to do at least until, you know, this passes, whether that's through a herd immunity or the fielding of a successful vaccine for COVID-19. And both of those, I don't care who you talk to that are medical professionals, both of those are still 12 to 24 months away, no matter what the politicians are saying. I mean, as I said, my wife is a physician. Because of what I do with government affairs, we're getting the actual medical reporting data, and we're looking at it for our 2 businesses very closely. And nothing says this is going to end anytime soon. So we're all going to have to be creative, and we're all going to have to work together. And it's a scary new world. God, that was depressing.
Yeah, it was, and I didn't mean to laugh out loud. Yeah, it was. Way to bring everybody down, Steven.
Well, let me say something. Let me make one last comment on that. You know what? This will pass. Perhaps not as quickly or as painlessly as we would like it to, but this will pass, and life will return to a normal. It may not be the normal we knew. Restaurants and bars may be very different places, even 2, 3, 5 years from now. It is what it is. And we will all have to continue to move forward and do the best we can to keep our businesses alive, keep our employees employed so that they can make a living, and keep our communities healthy, both physically and economically.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear this, but there will be a new normal. We may not love it at first, but we will get there. Steven, please stay safe. My love to you and your family. Keep cranking out that hand sanitizer, and I'm looking forward to tasting the new stuff. Not the sanitizer.
One last thing for your audience.
Yeah.
One last thing for your audience.
Yes, sir.
Be well, drink well, and if you do have small businesses, distilleries, breweries, wineries, small restaurants that are doing takeout, other small businesses that are open, please patronize them. All our small business people need revenue right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Cheers.
Thanks, man.